one of the most important things I did before my wedding happened the night before my wedding actually began. Now, I didn't really call it a bachelor party. I wasn't really thinking of it that way, but I gathered a group of men that I know and that I truly trust in a circle the night before, and that circle changed the way that I showed up for my wedding. And here's why I'm making an episode in this. Because in hindsight, I don't think I could have really showed up for the experience of my wedding. I don't think I could have been fully present in it the way that I was without this gathering. And now plenty of men get married without having a bachelor party like this one, but what I am certain of is this. Because of the work that I've done and the kind of relationship that I care to create, I know I needed a place to be witnessed, to be challenged, and to be steadied before stepping into something that was going to shape the rest of my life. And so today on the podcast, I want to share about my experience. Not because every man needs my version of a bachelor party, but because we all do need something. A circle, a ritual, some moment of grounding in community before we step through life's big thresholds. Be it a wedding or a funeral, a move, a breakup, a new child, any kind of transition that you really want to honor or to learn from, or just to really be present for. So my intention with this episode is to offer an example, not a prescription for what you need. Because what gave me a profound sense of freedom and purpose and the ability to be fully present and awake through the biggest day of my life was this event, was this bachelor party. So many of us feel like we have to walk into life's defining moments alone, but we don't. And here's what I would recommend if you're wondering how to really make the most of a big moment or transition, or just really wanting to honor this new phase that you're stepping into. Stay with me. This is Reclaiming the Gentle Man. I'm Dave Lashansky. So I want to be honest and say before I really dig into this episode that up until about a month before the wedding, I wasn't really planning on doing this. I had thought a lot about doing a bachelor party. I wanted to do something like intentional, that was fun, but yes, non-traditional. I wasn't thinking strippers and alcohol, but I didn't put any effort into making that happen. And in spite of a lot of offers for friends and family to organize something, I didn't put any effort into bringing people together for a bachelor party. But in the weeks before my wedding, a dear friend was in town and we went on a walk with a few other guys, and he posed this question to me point blank. He said, "Dave, are you being supported by other men for your wedding?" And when he said it, it hit me pretty hard that not only was I avoiding celebrating my stepping into my marriage with my brothers, but I was also avoiding calling in their support. And so I said no. And because I am blessed to have amazing men in my life, and because I made the choice to surround myself with men that are conscious and kind and really leaders in their own right, I received an amazing gift in that moment. Because two of these friends said, "We'll do something for you. We'll put it together." And so I put out a message to men who I thought could take that moment seriously, men who could participate in something sacred and not cower into shame or laughter at the idea. And 8 men came together in a circle on a totally empty beach in Miami on Halloween night, the night before my wedding began. And I knew I wasn't going to be thrust into a strip club, and I knew I wasn't going to be ribbed about making a commitment to one woman for the rest of my life, but I was totally unprepared for what took place in that gathering. Immediately, when we all got there, one of the guys drew a large circle in the sand, and he made an invitation to the men that gathered. He said, when you step into that circle, you are entering a sacred space, a space in support and in service of our brother Dave. Now, the two men leading this gathering, who are the ones that offered to do this on that walk, they're men that really brought me into men's work. They hosted the first men's gathering I ever attended. They organized the men's intensive that set me on a trajectory of getting to the root of why I wasn't the man I wanted to be, which led to my life's work, healing and growing and eventually becoming a coach and working with men and couples myself. So, in short, these guys were really used to organizing a group of men, and just the way they held themselves, the way they held this moment, for me and for us all, was so potent. And because that invitation was made, right off the bat, all the guys that showed up, who are not all coaches or even really experienced in men's work, everyone got on board. The whole vibe shifted. And everyone there realized that they were there for something important, something that would demand that they leave behind some armor. When everyone was in the circle, we were led into our bodies with some movement and some breath work, and I was invited to take the center of the circle as we got into our bodies, and I was invited to turn to each man and greet them, to be welcomed as the circle opened. And immediately I got the sense that this was going to be all about me, and that I was going to have to tend to that ego part that wants to be seen as generous, right? That doesn't want to take people's time and attention, that doesn't want to be at the center of the circle. Because I knew I was pretty much going to be there in some form or another for the entire time. So when we'd gotten into our bodies, this circle became the opportunity for every man to share wisdom and offer reflections and challenge me with questions, to inquire and poke around, and to call forward and hold the parts of me that weren't feeling ready for this moment. All of it guided with intention and clarity of purpose. Each section of questioning and reflecting and prompting me was opened up with space, was given room to breathe, was potent and powerful in its own right. And it brought out all of me. The parts of me that doubted if I was up to marriage, that doubted if I could handle the responsibility that I was stepping into. It brought out the parts of me that doubted if I could show up for this thing that was in the process of unfolding. And it was scary, terrifying to voice these things that were coming up in me in that moment. These were not all positive things. A lot of these parts that were coming through didn't feel ready to get married. And this was probably the most potent part of the night for me. It was the moment that I needed most. And it was the moment when I was invited to share what fears and what shadows were coming through. To really be real and held in what was coming up for me as I considered this marriage I was about to step into. And when I did this, it was like finally putting down this bag of stones that I didn't realize I was carrying. When I shared my fears, when I allowed my brothers to hold these shadow parts that I felt shame about, these shadow parts that were coming through and making me wonder, worry if I was really ready for this, I just felt lighter. And it wasn't as if I was feeling generally unprepared going into this wedding. I had done my work. I'd been considering this for years before we even got engaged. And all of us experience doubt. All of us experience fear. And when we don't take a moment to turn to it, when we don't allow ourselves to presence it in the midst of transition, in the midst of making a commitment, they become bigger. They become heavier. And those parts of me in that moment that I was scared to admit to myself didn't feel like they were good enough to get married, didn't feel like they were ready to get married, suddenly got really clear, suddenly became really present to me. And I could see them for what they were. These younger parts of me, the soldier in me that I learned about in therapy that wants to make sure that I do everything correctly so that I don't make mistakes and get embarrassed. The manager in me that I learned about in my men's circles that controls what's safe to speak about and what's not. The youngest parts of me that I learned about from psychedelic work that adopted the ways that my parents operated instinctually before I learned that I could actually choose the ways that I wanted to act. All of these parts and more came through an upliftment that I didn't realize I needed until that moment started to take over. And this upliftment felt so good because what I was fearing, what I felt wasn't ready or good enough, was spoken into a circle of men that were ready and intending to hold it. Just the thought of speaking about my fears and my doubts was so much harder than the act of actually doing it. Because when I spoke them, when I watched the faces of the men around me receive these parts of my ego and my psyche, these creeping thoughts, these things that were hiding in the shadows, when I watched their faces, it didn't change into disgust. I didn't see anger in the faces of the men around me, and I didn't see laughter. Their faces held compassion and sweetness and kindness. They held an understanding. And through the leadership of everyone that came into that circle, through their loving reflections and the practices that followed, I felt totally free to be and choose who it is that I want to be. I felt free to enter into this new phase, this grand new phase of my life without the doubt or the shame or the fear that I wasn't ready for it completely. And you might be listening to this and wondering why I didn't talk to Vanna about this. And it's because while she has been the greatest support that I have ever known in my life, truly, the most loving force in my life, she couldn't give this to me. She couldn't be the one to hold my fears and my worries about marriage. Because she's not a neutral party in this. She's half of it. Because these fears and doubts weren't ones that were actively causing me to make a different decision, but they were looming in my subconscious. And this is really the reason that this bachelor party was so important to me. Because it gave both Vanna and me the freedom to know that I was clearing and checking and validating, being accountable for what I was bringing into my marriage. Because the most dangerous thing that many men bring into their marriage is a practice of using their relationship, right? Using their marriage as the place to dump their fear and their doubts. Because they don't have a circle of men, because they don't have a brotherhood that can hold in this way. And so all these unprocessed emotions, right? The child parts and the teenage parts, the shame and the fear that drive them get dumped into a marriage that can't hold all of that. One person can't hold all of these parts of us. Vanna can hold a lot. She has held a lot for me. But what I needed and what all of us need is another place to bring the excess. The stuff that we can spare our marriage from. A place where we can really look at what's inside without burdening our partners with it. And this circle offered me that. And I want to share one of the most potent parts of this gathering with you. So one of the things that I shared in the circle is that leading into those days, leading into the days before my marriage, I was noticing the feeling of my legs buckling under me. And in some small and mostly unconscious way, I heard the message that was saying I wasn't ready for this. I couldn't hold it all. That if I couldn't support my own weight in this important moment, how could I ever be ready to support ours together? And when the moment came and she needed me, could I really step into that role as a husband? And so after I expressed this feeling of my legs buckling, starting with how it felt in my body, right? And then getting into what I was believing about it and the fears coming through from it, what unfolded was amazing. The men unshamed it. Everyone shared how they, some were married, some not, some older and some younger, how all of them had experienced this too. They validated for me that it was okay and that I wasn't alone in it. And they challenged me to really explore what was true for me in this. And it concluded with me at the center of the circle and all 8 men's hands on my back and my chest and my shoulders. And like armor, they put their weight on me and called me to hold it, to stand there holding the weight of their hands, to show me that not only was I not alone, but that I was stronger than I believed I was. And seeing how much it meant to me to feel my own strength in that moment and to feel their support in that moment, they offered to give me this experience throughout the wedding. And so people would come up to me and put a hand on my chest or my back or my shoulder and remind me of the strength and support in me and all around me. It was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in a circle. And it was the culminating part of the experience that I needed to really feel ready for my wedding. To know that I was supported moving into my marriage. And what followed after that night was 2 days of the most love, the most power, the most presence I have ever felt. I never imagined that I could receive so much positive energy coming at me from all directions. And every time I looked at Vanna, I knew that I was ready. I knew that I was beyond blessed to be where I was, and that nothing else mattered in those moments. That I was choosing her, that I was choosing this commitment with my whole being, with certainty and with support. Now, I'd done years of self-work before this bachelor party to be able to experience this too. And Vanna and I have been through it together. We've had amazing support. We've been to therapy and coaching together. We have grown together. And we've always had this strong drive to grow into the best love that we can imagine. All of that is true. And the support of the men that showed up that night, that have been a part of my journey through different parts of my life, made all the difference for me. And if any of you are listening to this, know that Vanna and I are both so grateful to you, to all of you, for showing up, for giving me the opportunity, the clearing the space I needed to show up at my best for the most important moments of my life. And so if you're listening to this and doubting that you could do something like this for yourself, I promise you that it's possible. If you haven't yet, find or start a men's circle. Get experience being in intentional space with a group of men so that when the time comes and you need it, you'll be prepared. If you want help on doing this, one of my highest missions in life is to support men in creating more men's groups because it changed my life so much, because I think it is a necessary factor for any happy relationship. I think men need a group of men to pour into sometimes. So if you need help doing that, finding it, starting it, whatever it is, get in touch. This is really important stuff. Because there are no substitutions for us gathering intentionally with a group of men when we're ready to shift something in our lives. There are no substitutes. But then again, would you really want one if there were? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Reclaiming the Gentleman. As you can probably tell if you've listened to the past few episodes of this podcast, this wedding has been a transformational experience for me. And as a relationship coach, I am taking notes on everything that's unfolding. It is potent and powerful, and it's not always easy, and it's not all butterflies and rainbows. But it is one of the most incredibly beautiful experiences of my life, the wedding itself and what's unfolded since. What I am experiencing as a husband is as close to clarity and purpose, clarity of purpose, as I've ever felt. And one of the things that I'm offering from this space, from this energy, is a workshop called Letting Love In. It's an activation, really. It's about reawakening to the experience of choosing your life and your love with intention, of activating your capacity to grow in your love and to receive more of the love all around you, because there is more there than you know. I promise. If you're interested in joining that call, that activation, you can sign up at my website, davelashansky.com. I would love to see you there. It's one of my favorite experiences I've ever created, and it is totally free. Check it out. Also, I am starting a weekly email activation. It is a newsletter that will come into your inbox every Sunday to prompt more clarity of purpose and more connection to your vitality through one simple prompt or phrase or question to help you realign, to help spark that fire that makes life way more fun and that helps you find the euphoria in the challenges. They're going to be there anyway. Why not learn and grow and have fun in the process of tackling them? You can sign up for those also on my website, and I'll put a link below this episode as well. As always, this episode was produced by me through my podcast production company, David Benjamin Sound. You can learn more about podcasting for yourself or your business at davidbenjaminsound.com. So much more to come. I'll be back in a week.